Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Good morning, the 12th of June, in an exhausting week in America, and looking toward the weekend. I do so with great trepidation. I do want to say again that my sense is that if there are not literally millions of Americans in the streets on Saturday, all over this country, we're doomed. If not now, when? There's nothing subtle about what is being attempted by this administration and what is going on. And I assure you, the eyes of the world are upon us, and we must come through. You've got to put your body out there. I don't care if it's not something you do. I don't care if it's out of your comfort zone. I don't care if it's raining. I don't care if there's a lot of traffic and where do I park. I don't care about any of that. Something a hell of a lot more important is going on than our discomfort, our schedules. It is that dire. Make no mistake. Make no mistake. Even if we show up by the millions, it would just be the beginning of what is going to be a terrifying and long haul. I don't think anyone can pretend to know where we are heading. But it is going to be daunting. We're heading either to living in a dictatorship, or we're heading into a civil war, or we're heading into the kind of violence and civil unrest we have never known. There's no pretty picture if you look ahead with your eyes wide open. There is only struggle, and the stakes are so extraordinarily high. Okay, I just want to, before I get all hot and bothered, I want to note the passing of two great American musical artists. That was obviously Sly Stone, who's, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at and of course Brian Wilson, and I'm these two men. Their output formed so much of the soundtrack of my life. Brian Wilson is, I think, one of the last people I saw in concert. It's when I'm so thrilled he did, toward the end of his life, start to perform, went on tour. He came here. He was at the Benedum. And wow, just wow. I'm not a music critic. I have nothing really to say. I just want to say what Elton John said about Brian Wilson. He had an orchestra in his head. Bob Dylan was in awe of him. The Beatles were in awe of him. I think his ballad, God Only Knows, is one of the most beautiful songs I know. His album Pet Sounds is considered one of the greatest albums ever made. Rolling Stone ranked it as number 2 on its list of the greatest albums of all time. It gave Sgt. Pepper number 1. Well, it gave it number 1 in 2003, and it gave Marvin Gaye's What's Going On number 1 in 2020. But Pet Sounds came in second place. The Beatles producer, George Martin, said that Sgt. Pepper would never have happened, those were his words, if not for Pet Sounds. And Paul McCartney said, "It was Pet Sounds that blew me out of the water. I figure no one is educated musically till they've heard that album." Yeah. Brian Wilson, Sly Stone, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Your music will live and continue to give incredible joy. Both dead at 82. A sign that we are in frightening times is when fear becomes just almost the default atmospheric. And that is already evidencing itself constantly. I think I've mentioned before that you cannot read any article anymore, it seems, without someone being quoted anonymously, and always with the parenthetical, for fear of retribution. So that the only way reporters are able to do their jobs now is not by telling us who they are talking to, because the insiders that they are talking to are frightened. Frightened for their safety, frightened for their livelihood, frightened for what would happen if they spoke out publicly. And I was taken by 2 instances of that just today. There was a story that over 90 scientists in who work for the National Institutes of Health had written and signed onto a letter which just excoriates what the Trump administration is doing to our national health. And it was these 90 plus scientists who did sign this letter. Those are the ones who managed to overcome their fear. But another 250 scientists anonymously supported the letter. So the vast majority unwilling to put their names, but they did make their mark and said, yes, but I don't want my name out there. And this letter was sent to RFK Jr. And just the first sentence is all I'll share. We dissent to administration policies that undermine the NIH mission, waste public resources, and harm the health of Americans and people across the globe. Okay. And just note that the majority of those scientists were afraid to have their names publicized. And it says here, the letter made clear, quote, due to a culture of fear and suppression created by this administration. We are living in an autocracy now, a fascistic country now. In many respects, what we feared has already happened, or I wouldn't be reading these things in my morning paper. And then I noted yesterday how the president had gone to Fort Bragg and had assembled before him soldiers that were handpicked to be the kind of soldiers he liked looking at. And I saw a picture for the first time today of that crowd of soldiers. And I'm not clear about it because Trump was in the foreground of the picture and all of them were in the background. So they are starting to blur a bit. But I swear, I saw in that crowd of hundreds what looked to be, to my eye, only one black soldier. Now, anyone who knows our military knows our military has a lot of black soldiers. But these were Trump's handpicked. And he wanted them to be soldiers who would cheer when he belittled their former commander-in-chief, Joe Biden, which is outrageous because the military is supposed to be nonpartisan. Unless, of course, you're living in an autocracy. And then it serves der Fuhrer. So today I read that one commander at Fort Bragg was willing to tell a reporter this. This has been a bad week for the Army, for anyone who cares about us being a neutral institution. This was shameful. I don't expect anything to come of it, but I hope maybe we can learn from it long term. It says here that the general was willing to speak on the condition of anonymity to avoid retaliation. And I think more than anything, that one chilled me. Because if the commanders in our army are afraid are afraid of the commander-in-chief and what he will do if they what? Speak out, exercise their rights, defy him? Because we know that they know that their oath tells them that they must summon the courage and defy unconstitutional orders. So there you have, and I mean, to me, those two right there this morning, I thought, whoa, that's it. We need millions of Americans in the streets, non-violently in the streets. Here in Pittsburgh, it's Saturday at 12:30, Grant Street, or as close as you can get to Grant Street. I'm hoping there'll be so many people that you might not be able to get quite to Grant Street. You'll be on, 2nd Avenue or the Boulevard of the Allies or who knows what. But please, yesterday I strong-armed 2 friends into going when they were not intending to. It's D-Day. And I needn't tell you on Saturday what will be happening, something that has never happened in this country, this repulsive military parade. This Red Square military parade for Der Fuhrer. There was a piece that David Brooks wrote a while back, and I think it speaks to the 2 parts of America that are heading toward battle. And he makes clear that people on this side, my side, your side, the anti-fascist, anti-nationalist side, love this country and understand that this country's force is not militaristic. It has always been the force of an idea, the power of an idea. And I was reminded of it the other day when I was going through a bunch of papers I have, trying to organize things, and I came upon notes that I had made when my father died, and I was trying to write a eulogy. And let me find it here. I saw this, just scribbled. Loved his country, not in a flag-waving, bombastic way, but loved it and respected its values. And then I went off on this tangent how my memory of a child as him at dinner just lecturing us while I put here with my face down in the pot roast. as he talked about the values of this country. This wonderful man who fought in World War II and loved this country. The idea of this country that understandably it has never quite lived up to, but in our best times, we have moved closer. It's why Susan and I often say we're so glad my dad is not here. He would be beside himself. I'm glad he was spared this. But this brings me to this David Brooks piece. Because he mentioned in it that at the Republican National Convention, that J.D. Vance had said this: people will not fight for abstractions, but they will fight for their home. Now, that is a statement that doesn't seem particularly extraordinary in any way, and that you might even nod when you hear it. It enraged David Brooks because he says, here's a guy with an advanced degree telling us that regular soldiers never fight out of some sense of moral purpose, some commitment to a larger cause. The men who froze at Valley Forge, the men who stormed the beaches at Normandy and Guadalcanal. He said people will not fight for abstractions. Oh, yes, they do. And they have. And they've died for them. Brooks goes on to say, of course, warriors fight for their comrades, for their homes, for their families, but when the moral stakes are made clear, most soldiers are absolutely motivated in part by our ideals. And he says this is what makes him angriest about Trumpism. He says one of its intents is to rebut the notion that America is not just a home, but is also an idea and a moral cause. That America stands for a set of universal principles. The principle that all men are created equal, that they are endowed with inalienable rights, that democracy is the form of government that best recognizes human dignity, that best honors beings who are made in the image of God. And these guys, Vance, Trump, and those who follow him, place no value on those principles. So sharing a little bit more of Brooks. There are two forms of nationalism. There is a kind I don't like the word nationalism, but there is the aspirational nationalism of those who see America organized around ideals. And then there is the Trump form. And that's the nationalism that America is a collection of people whose job it is to take care of their own. And who they see as American is white and it's Christian. They've made that so very clear. They fight against the very idea that America is the embodiment of universal ideals. They go after diversity, which is our strength. What did they first declare war on? DEI, diversity. Because if America is an idea, then Black people and brown people from anywhere in the world can become Americans by coming here and believing in that idea. If America is an idea, then Americans have a responsibility to promote democracy, to stand with Ukraine. If America is an idea, it's an idea that we care about human dignity and human rights. Their morality, if they can be said to have any, is a tribal morality. We take care of our own. We don't have to take care of starving children in Africa. Trumpism is a giant effort to narrow the circle of concern. To be small and tribal. It aims to diminish the best parts of the human spirit. And that's why we have to be in the streets to show we stand against this, because they're coming on like gangbusters. He's itching to put troops in Pittsburgh. He's itching to put troops in every city in this country. It's either now or never. It really has come to that. I'm upset. I'm ferreting around in my head because I had this idea that occurred to me as I was reading some of that, and I wanted to share it, and now I cannot locate it because that's what happens. It'll come at some point. Also, there was a chilling piece in, I think it was the Times today. It was about something that happened in a small Massachusetts town. Let me get it for you here. And it is simply one, dispatch from what is going on in small towns, rural areas all over our country right now, as our government hunts for people, not criminals, hardworking people who live here that don't have the proper papers. Show me your papers. And this piece is from Great Barrington, Massachusetts. And it talks about two women who run a business there, and they happened to see the other day what looked like, I don't know, it was a scary scene. All of a sudden, there were these guys who looked like they were either playing a war game or they were dressed in tactical gear. They had masks on their faces. They were carrying weapons. Here's one of the women who's looking out her window and freaking out. These guys had guns hanging all over them. I mean, none of them had the same letters on the front of their vests. Some of them didn't even have letters, but it said police across the back. One had light-colored jeans and sneakers on, and one had on a Red Sox hat. They'd arrived in unmarked cars. Some had out-of-state plates. They banged on her door, and she said, "Who are you? What are you?" They refused to identify themselves. She asked to see a warrant. There was no warrant. One briefly flashed a badge at her, but she said, "I couldn't tell what that badge was. It could have been from a Cracker Jacks box." There was a gardener in the lot next door pulling weeds. They descended on him. The business owners, these two women, started videoing what was going on, and again asking these men, "Who are you?" As they documented it, the gardener was put in the back of an unmarked car, and off he went. They since found out that he is being detained somewhere near Boston. His family has been unable to determine his whereabouts. Meanwhile, the two women have been receiving threats since the incident because they spoke out to local newspapers. And so this is where we are in America. Men in full military gear are banging on people's doors and disappearing people in front of our eyes. They are refusing to identify themselves. Is this an America that you recall? And you know what? Anyone could do this, and it's happening. There have been a number of cases of civilians impersonating ICE agents, but really committing robberies. Get yourself some tactical gear, dress yourself up as a cop, and break into somebody's house. That happened here in Pennsylvania. There have been kidnappings using this kind of technique now in Florida and South Carolina. Other forms of public intimidation. These are being reported all over and will only get more so. because anybody now can pretend, any thug can do this. And stop and think of all of the thugs from January 6th who are now pardoned, and all the Proud Boys who are now pardoned and totally knowing that they're on what appears to be the winning side. You think we don't have a Gestapo? Oh, okay, let me get this. Chris says, I was at the Brian Wilson concert at the Benedum in 2016 along with you. I've always loved Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. What an absolute genius. And what a tortured soul he was. But probably if he hadn't gone through all of the abuse by his father and by that crazy therapist he had and his mental illness, we never would have had the beautiful music he created out of all of that. God Only Knows has always been my ringtone. Oh, man, how nice. And I've always planned to get a tattoo with the words, God Only Knows. I only have two others, one in honor of my mother and one in honor of my father. And now that Brian has passed, I'll be making my appointment to get God Only Knows. Also, if you haven't seen the documentary Sly Stone, it is a must watch. It was done by Questlove. Oh, well, he did that other wonderful. Oh, that's great. Thank you. I will make a point of that. I will make a point of that. That's good stuff. Yeah. Oh, guys. Okay. Well, sorry to be a bummer, but what can I do? Oh, this was a great one. Did you know we're on high alert? Did you know? I mean, I know I'm on high alert, but actually, no. This is our embassies and stuff, and our foreign national. Let me find this thing here because I had not seen this. I think I'm missing a lot of stuff by not watching television news, but I don't have the stomach for it. The United States is on high alert in anticipation of a potential Israeli strike on Iran. Did you know that? Because I hadn't. Somehow I missed that one. Oh dear. The State Department, Marco, has authorized the evacuation of some personnel in Iraq, and the Pentagon, that's Hegseth, is greenlighting the departure of military family members across the Middle East. Good God. This heightened security environment comes as President Trump expresses dimming hopes of achieving a deal with Iran. What? The greatest deal maker in the world can't make a deal? He has dimming hopes? And where's that deal on day one with the end of the Ukraine-Russia war? Oh, man. Trump told the New York Post, my gosh, I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to him. But I am much less confident of a deal being made. Did you see he was at the Kennedy Center last night? Yeah. Yeah. When he came and showed up in the presidential box, a few uh, a few boos were heard, and then his folks, because it was his folks that were mostly in the room. They stood quickly and started chanting. This is in the Kennedy Center. Started chanting, USA, USA, USA. That's your America. Okay. Well, gee, it's a beautiful day. Do enjoy it. Do make every effort to enjoy it. Get some sun on your face. So, I don't know, guys. I haven't said anything about this ABC's Terry Moran getting axed, but I must say I I can't believe he didn't know he would be. I mean, what he did is something that I mean, even before Trump, I think uh, a mainstream broadcast journalist would know that they're not supposed to put their personal opinions out there. It's just something that we learned in journalism school. So I have little doubt that Terry Moran knew that he was blowing up his job when he posted on X a statement of truth, but as I said, even before Trump, this would have gotten somebody in big trouble because understandably, you do want people giving the news to be seen as, relatively neutral figures. They're allowed to be human, yes, but I'm sorry. Is what I learned in journalism school. And in case you missed it, he posted something about Stephen Miller, one of the most vile members of our species one could conjure. And he said of him, he is a man who is richly endowed with the capacity for hatred, and that his hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. Whoa. Now, I think that's good. That's a real good assessment of one of the president's right-hand men, but no, that would get you fired. And then he even went on to take on Trump, who, by the way, he's interviewed, who he's covered, and you just can't. You can't. He wrote, Trump is a world-class hater, but his hatred is only a means to an end, and that end is his own glorification. Well, I mean, Terry, I agree with what you're saying there, buddy, but So ABC said we are not renewing. We've made the decision to not renew his contract. We hold all of our reporters to the highest standards of objectivity, fairness, and professionalism. Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been the statement from any network. seriously. But he'll be fine. He's already on Substack. You can read his thoughts there. So, few other little things I have, because you know, Thursdays being the last show of my week, they sometimes become sort of grab bag affairs, and here's some stuff that's been sitting around, and I just want to get rid of it because it keeps ending up not getting out there. Okay, there's a few on AI, which is, I don't know. I was thinking, if you're somebody who's given to being afraid, there are so many things to be afraid of right now. I mean, I was just thinking, somehow nuclear war had sort of gotten pushed back in my head. Not anymore. And then seeing high alert, Israel might hit, Iran, and I'm thinking nuclear uh, war is really ticking right back up, especially with whatever. There's so many nuclear powers now. Yeah. But and AI, oh my God. So there was this piece, and it was sort of. I thought of it. Do you know when a kid goes off to college now, and it costs so damn much money? One of the reasons the humanities are, disappearing is because you can't get a job. Okay, I'm an English major, or I'm a art history major. Yeah, how's that going to be turned into money? So colleges now are more like what I would have considered vocational schools. They are intended to prepare someone for a job, and a good paying job, so that they can repay the gazillions in student loans they took out to get the damn diploma in the first place, right? But I've been thinking about a lot of these kids who maybe wanted to major in art history, but instead went into like computer stuff because that's where things were going. And now they've graduated from college, and guess what? They can't get a job because it's going to be given to a computer. And that's a piece I read by a guy who, in fact, covers tech and employment, Kevin Roos. And he said this month, millions of young people will graduate from college and look for work in industries that have little use for their skills. And these are the skills that they were told would be necessary. Because the skills they have gotten are rapidly being phased out by artificial intelligence. He said he spoke with, over the last several months, with economists, corporate execs, job seekers, blah, blah, blah. And that's what he's found, that AI is taking their jobs. Says here, unemployment for recent college grads has jumped to an unusually high 5.8% in recent months. The Federal Reserve Bank in New York recently warned that the employment situation for these workers, these young kids getting out of college, has deteriorated noticeably. And then he goes on into saying what's going on at corporations. One tech executive recently told me, he says, that his company has stopped hiring anything below an L5 software engineer, which is a mid-level title typically given to programmers with 3 to 7 years of experience. They're not, so someone coming in out of college doesn't have a chance. Even somebody with 3 to 7 years doesn't have a chance. Companies can replace now these junior level employees at a fraction of the cost by a virtual worker, by AI. He goes on to say this. No, this is someone at the Brookings Institute. Employers are saying these tools are now so good that I no longer need marketing analysts. I don't need finance analysts. I don't need research assistants. You know, it reminds me of I was at a meeting with my financial advisors at a bank, and one of them, this was last year, and one of them was really excitedly telling me about tech and AI and how this is going to change and how exciting. And I was looking at this guy and saying, "You frigging fool! It's going to take your job. What do? You look at graphs and crunch numbers. AI can do what you do in 2 seconds flat. Why pay you a penny?" Okay, a few more things here. Using AI to automate white-collar jobs has been a dream among corporate executives for years. Let's see how quickly we can put millions out of work. And this Kevin Roos, who's writing this, says, I heard these guys fantasizing about this in Davos back in 2019. Can't wait. But he says it wasn't until just the other day that this technology wasn't good enough. Yeah, you could use AI to automate some routine tasks, and a lot of companies did, but when it came to more complex and technical parts of many jobs, AI couldn't hold a candle to a human being. And that, folks, is starting to change very rapidly. Here's an exec quoting. This one model, Claude Opus 4, can code for several hours without stopping, which is a tantalizing possibility. If you're accustomed to paying 6 figures to an engineer for that kind of productivity, you don't have to pay Claude Opus 4 a goddamn cent. So these poor kids, these poor young people, they're going to be living in a fucking autocracy. They're going to be unemployed, highly educated, unemployed, pissed off. And I guess this is how you lose a country. I don't know. The chief executive of Anthropic recently predicted that AI would eliminate half of all entry-level white-collar jobs in 5 years. And that's considered what? Good news to the rich, to the billionaires. I I just, what do they think people are supposed to do? Major in art history. And then there was this other article. I mean, all these things dovetail. This is another one from the Times last Monday. Data shows boys and young men are struggling. Several economic and social changes in the United States have combined to change boys and men's trajectories, and those trajectories are down. There's a wealth of data now that shows that boys and young men are stagnating. It's why they're voting for Donald Trump. They're lost. They're pissed. The outcome for black boys are worse. Growing up in poverty disproportionately hurts boys. Boys have always lacked girls in certain areas, yet there had been little focus on their issues perhaps because men have dominated in so many spheres. And then we turned our attention to girls, right? And the boys now need our attention, guys. Boys enter kindergarten behind girls in both their academic readiness and their behavior, and those gender gaps persist as they move through school. Across the United States, girls score better on reading tests than boys. Girls earn higher GPAs. Women outnumber men in college enrollment, which is linked to broader career prospects and higher earnings. Wow. Boys are roughly twice as likely as girls to be diagnosed with mental health issues. Overall, suicide is more prevalent among men than women and has increased among young people, but the increases are far greater for young men. Those are our children. You see our government doing anything about that? Too busy chasing brown people through lettuce fields. Yeah, well, guys, I'm sorry. What can I do? We'll look forward to finding maybe happier things to talk about, but you can imagine that it is difficult. And I'm just going to beg you one more time. Whatever it was you thought you were doing Saturday at noon, please, please. Show yourselves. You do nothing by staying in your house. You do nothing. We really need to show ourselves. So I'm begging you. All right, I guess that's it. I'll be done. I have another minute left here, but I'll be danged if I can think of anything to say other than please, please. I hope you show up. I'm going to be there for my father. Think of somebody you'd like to stand for. Your child, your grandchild. Let's be there. Okay. Thank you so much. And God help us.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.